the way that those things tend to operate is that if you're negotiating in good faith on one platform, like the stuff tends to travel across those, you do the same type of deal from an Instagram to a TikTok to a Facebook to a Snapchat, those sorts of things. Small nuances, but similar idea,
Dude, I want to go back all the way to the beginning. So
Cool.
One, because you're a musician and I'm a musician. I've played music all my life, in and out of bands. One low level, sort of successful one.
Sure.
That I would. But dude, so I want to hear about that, because it sounds like you were always doing that, even from a young age. And then selfishly, and for the audience, if you're into it, great. If not, all good.
You're scratching your own itch.
Yeah, but I think this is just a rad story, and this is on Robert's YouTube, which we'll link to. But tell me about the story, being a musician your whole life, loving music, being involved in bands and in the local scene and everything, and then how you got connected to Dirk Lance, old school bassist from Incubus, because I grew up a huge Incubus fan, and also just because I think all the stuff we do in our past, and you talked about this too, how it kind of like coalesces into our future, and the stuff we're doing, we're not even sure how it's going to relate later, but it's like these little tidbits that kind of come into your career and who you are. And it sounds like that was like a pivotal thing for you.
Huge, man. I mean, it was really like just such a cool place to start. Thank you for like doing that research and kind of putting those dots together.
And you grew up, because I know they're from the audience. If you don't know, they're from Calabasas. And,
I'm an 818 native. I think it shows in like every aspect of what I do. Like, I'm a grown ass man with a mortgage and insurance and all that stuff, but like I still show up to all these places like in a punker t-shirt with no labels and just like Navy Vans because Dogtown and Z-Boy. Like, that's it. So and they were like literally in our backyard. Like I saw them even before they got put on to any of these larger kind of Hollywood clubs. Like, I remember you can hear me in the back of an Incubus or a Hoobastank recording at the Cobalt Cafe, like a block from my house.
I played there once as a teenager.
I had Dave on speed dial, dude. So this is such a fun story. I love all this connection. So like everything kind of really formulates from this one picture, and the video that you referenced that I was talking about. And when I do a lot of education at this point too, I kind of tell my story through this one signed press photo of their sophomore album, Make Yourself. And I was a senior in high school. Really close friend of mine came back. I was, kind of take it back a little bit. Both my parents come from very musical backgrounds. The super long story short is apparently my dad was supposed to go on tour with Oingo Boingo. He had the same manager as Van Halen at the time. He had a weird feeling, and 9 months later, this dream killer popped out, and he was like, I'm so glad I didn't go on tour, because like I would have missed this whole thing, right? So that's dad. And then mom's side is just like, I can't, there's so many musicians and so many people that have done the things that they like really love doing. My uncle, her oldest brother, this is from an Italian family, right? So he's my godfather, like all of the things that you would think of from like, the movies and all that stuff, very important role. He was like effectively Mr. Holland at my middle school for 40 some odd years. So I have this, like, I played a bunch of different instruments. Both my majors are music business. And, I traveled the world doing a whole bunch of really fun stuff, and both in choir stuff and in like, metal bands, hardcore, all that type of stuff. And so a close friend of mine came back. We were literally in the foyer of my high school doing like this Glee performance, not the show, like the men's choir type of stuff. And she hands me this picture, and it's like addressed to me. It's like signed, Dirk had like, to Robert, thanks for being a cool dude. And I was like, what the hell is this? And she goes, well, they just did an acoustic performance. That's a promo for this sophomore album, Make Yourself, that's coming out. You would love what I'm doing. And I was like, well, where are you going? She goes, I'm going to Cal State Northridge. They've got a music business program, and it's like right up your alley. And I'm like, cool. I don't really even care what I do. Like, I just showed up to the SATs and like filled in my name as Bubbles, because I was like, I'm going to the school. Like, I don't have to care about anything else, Thankfully I got in. And that just kind of set the course of like how I wanted to be this creative, was kind of this like sensible dude on one side, because my objective in showing up to school is like, I kind of need to learn the nuts and bolts of how this industry is going to work if I really want to like push and be inside of it. But then this like reckless freeform creative guy, because I was playing in every possible thing that I could get my hands on. At that point, my main instrument was bass and vocals, but I had played horns and, percussion and all this different stuff throughout my entire life. So I just like kept saying yes to stuff and kept moving around, kind of compressing the middle half of this narrative. I ended up graduating from Northridge, but got a job at Universal Music. I started on a Monday, graduated on a Tuesday, went right back to work on Wednesday, and I was there for over 10 years.
Wow.
And just kind of kept moving in this licensing field, doing royalty accounting, like heavy kind of music business standard stuff of like, the foundation of copyright and what it means. Halfway through there, went back to school. They basically had like an MBA equivalent that is music business focused. So instead of talking about Procter and Gamble, we were like looking at Spotify and all this cool stuff. And you go through those things, and what I say all the time is like school and graduate work and those sorts of things. Like you go in with this very narrow focus.
Yeah.
But if you're doing it well, like the process expands exponentially, both in like the actual curriculum and then what you learn about yourself. And that was probably the biggest, most profound aspect of coming out of that program, is that you just get such a deep introspective like view of who you are and what makes you tick, and like how are you approaching these projects and this like really stressful, from a time standpoint, stressful part of your life, and came out and kind of had this head full of like, I want to do a bunch of other stuff. And UMG was just an amazing, incredible portion of my life. Like I was able to buy a house. I got married. I had my kids, like all of those sorts of things. But then it's like, I don't think it's going to be fulfilling for the long haul. So 2016, almost 10 years ago, checked out at an 18-month-old and 4-month-old at the time. No real plan of income. My wife and I were hustling some e-commerce stuff and doing certain things, but I had like a 6-month runway, and I was just creatively dead inside. I wasn't doing anything music-wise. I wasn't doing any of that sort of stuff. So I picked up a camera and started vlogging, because like Casey Neistat was like the business.
Casey Neistat, yeah.
It was the best, right? So I made 200 movies in 200 days, just about like my kids' first steps and going to this birthday party and these sorts of things, and just posted it because I needed a creative deadline for myself, And the same type of stuff I used to do in music. I would come home from school or performing or whatever it was, and it'd be like midnight. And I was like, all right, bro, you got 30 minutes to write a song. You can use this SpongeBob stuffed animal and this delay pedal and this thing, and like, go. And so I would, it's kind of the same idea, So vlogging gave me this weird avenue, and I just kept posting stuff. And eventually my buddies that are all directors and producers and all this stuff, they all kind of like came in and are like, hey man, are you doing this stuff? Like, what is this? I'm like, how'd you find it? They're like, I don't know, it just popped up in my algorithm, but like this 10 seconds was great. And I was like, man, all right, like, can I turn 10 seconds into a minute? Can I turn a minute into 5? And it just kind of snowballed. So now, as I'm moving through, I'm teaching a graduate class. I go back, and I'm very fortunate to be able to come back and teach at my alma mater and UCLA and Musicians Institute. I taught at Cal Poly Pomona for a long time, all the stuff I did in my formative career. And I have a student, as I'm introducing this picture and telling the same story that I just told you, she sends me a side message and goes, hey, I know this is going to seem kind of crazy, but I'm interning for Dirk Lance's new band. Do you want me to set up like a call and you guys can talk to each other? And I was like, yeah, dude.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
yeah,
because as you, I know we were talking beforehand, like those records just, I didn't even realize you could make music like that.
Yeah.
And as it's over here, right? Like I'm a 5-string bass player. Like it was just so fundamental. And for me to think like, wow, like you could actually even approach it from this kind of interesting avant-garde way. So I was like, yeah, like of course, like I'd love to talk to him. And Susan connected the dots. It's crazy because I was in a conversation with DJ Mustard and ASAP Ferg talking about Jay Brown and how they're setting up to sell his publishing catalog for the 3rd time, blah, blah, and the phone rings and it's Dirk Lance. And I'm like, what is my life right now, dude? Like, how am I in this conversation?
All these heavy hitters, yeah.
Yeah, dude, it was wild. And you just, you talk about just the gratitude of appreciating the moment and understanding like these are all signs pointing to yes, like you're moving in the right direction. And, we hopped on the phone, we were chopping it up, of course, like West Valley natives, and we had all these different connection points in people. Like my kids play ball with some of his best friends. Like it was cool. And he's like, yo, we need some help on the video side. Like, can I come in and talk to your classes? And I can talk about performance royalties and all this different stuff. Like, would you like to kind of collaborate on a couple things? I was like, of course. It was like the peak of COVID.
Okay.
And so we ended up doing
so
a
not
bunch
that
of,
long ago.
no, it
Theory.
wasn't.
Yeah.
And we ended up doing some really fun stuff because of the confines of like COVID and how we had to move. They would come up with these ideas and I would like push them creatively in the video side. And the pinnacle of that is that we did a 6-song video EP at East West Studios in LA, which if you guys don't know what East West Studio is, like definitely look it up. The website's amazing. It'll go decade by decade and it'll wireframe out to all of the incredible recordings that have happened in each individual room. It's unbelievable. Like these boots were made for Walk-In in New York, and like Tool's Enema was in room 2, and Rage Against the Machine and 311 and Incubus and all this stuff. And so we ended up going to room 1. They got this group called Regiment Horns to come in, which is a 3-piece horn section. Dan Estrin from Hoobastank came and guest played guitar the entire time. And we, like I said, we did 3 takes of 5 cameras each. They recorded into the main channel board. There was our 72-channel Neve that was there. They had their guy came in with just like an incredible mic sponsorship and all this different stuff, and we made like a badass video EP, and amongst a bunch of other things, which was really fun. And it was just kind of a crazy full circle moment. I've got pictures of me line checking Dirk's bass to make sure that like everything was cool. The guy that was shooting with me sent it to my wife, and she's just like, wow, like what this crazy kind of full circle moment. But it's just fun. I'm always in a place of trying. I don't seek those moments out so much, Eric, but like I know that they're there, and I'm not necessarily a religious person by any means, but like this last couple of years have kind of forced me into a pretty spiritual place, and just really acknowledging how special those moments are, especially when as creatives we kind of tend to float and we get in our own heads about so many different things. Like just getting up and attacking the day sometimes for us can be really daunting. And so, you take those things as wins, man, and tremendous wins in your sail to be able to keep pushing you along. And I think that a lot of the times the things that are like our greatest accolades, it's not necessarily money in the bank. It's like pats on the back of like, you're doing it, man. And you're really like, you're checking these boxes and things are really cool, and just keep trusting the process is really the things that I take away from those types of moments,
Yeah, I like that. Keep trusting the process, because especially in a creative field, or probably any field, but like at least for me, I felt like I've always been like searching for like my moment of arrival, and it's weird. It's like the more you search for it, it does kind of just have to unfold based on all the past gigs, the shitty gigs. Then you start to get a little bit better gigs, and you meet more people, and then you start to make a little bit of money, and it slowly comes together. But as a creative, like you said, those moments are like these magic moments, and you kind of got to be patient, because in these fields, especially like in LA, and it's so competitive if you're doing audio or video, and you do have to be patient and kind of let it develop. But like you said, as a creative, our brains are just going crazy. We have all these ideas and we want to do this and that, but oftentimes the best stuff just kind of unfolds.
Yes, totally. I completely agree.
But going back, so were you, when you started with the camera and you started vlogging, had you had any video experience, or was that kind of the first time where you really were like learning about frame rates and like actual video?
Yeah, like the proper way of doing it, for sure.
Okay.
For sure. Okay. I had, I mentioned like a bunch of my buddies just kind of randomly falling on this stuff. As a creative person, like you just absorb other creatives from different disciplines, and a lot of my friends, my buddy Sammy Mosier is just an incredible director. My buddy Shai Harari is an amazing artist in like so many different disciplines. There's my buddy Damian Andrews, like a great photographer. So they just kind of saw stuff and really quite literally were like, hey, do you want to come on set and just set up C-stands? Like, we just need a body to be there, but I'm happy for you to be like around. And as that was happening, I'm kind of an interesting student where like I'm really good at lurking and kind of being a funny guy that's just around, but like I'm absorbing so much stuff that you don't even realize I'm processing at the time, So before then I was always, my buddy Sammy and I that I mentioned, like we were the type of dudes that were making, camera dollies out of skateboards and PVC pipe and those sorts of things. So I was always
had a passion or interested.
Yeah. And just like involved in the process, and like I had edited a ton. And like the old dad cams and those sorts of things. Like if we were on vacation, I was constantly shooting stuff. If we were, I was always documenting what our recordings looked like when we were making records. So I had done those sorts of things, but in terms of like fundamental, like no film school, no nothing. It was just like literally thrown into the deep end and figuring it out as we went. And to me, I don't know that that's necessarily the way that I would advise people to do it. But as a guy that had to put food on the table, I was kind of taking gigs to pay my way through learning the process of like the right way of doing these things,
Well, I think some of that did like organic, like starting like that, just being young and just, for lack of a better word, young and dumb and excited and be like, like I was kind of always adjacent. Like I had friends like shooting like skate videos and stuff, and I was kind of adjacent to it. I was never fully involved, but I feel like, that's kind of how you start, at least back then. It might be a little different now with all the technology and YouTube, but it kind of sounds like, that's how you start. You had an interest in it and it slowly just developed, and then you had some time on your hands and you're like, well, maybe I'll start really getting into this. And totally. And you kind of with creative stuff, like I tell people, they want to be an audio engineer or a YouTuber or whatever it is. Like you kind of just have to start, and naturally, if you're excited about it, it starts to like unfold itself, and you start to want to get better, and you learn more tips. And I know, I think I personally think that's a great way to learn. Just getting your hands dirty.
It totally, and I think what's interesting is that the acceleration of this from a video standpoint to me, I think in some contexts this might be a little unfair because I had already had that process as a musician earlier on in my late teens, early 20s, where the process of like the hustle, for lack of a better term, like it was already ingrained in me. You know what I mean? So like the late nights and the pushing extra hard, and then you put graduate school and working in the music industry on top of those two characteristics. It's like I'm good. Like there's a lot of times I'm meditating 2-3 in the morning at that early phase of my life because that's like what it necessitated. You know what I mean? I don't try to do that now. I try to have a little bit more structure in my day, but what kind of the early grind and phases of what that stuff looks like, it's not that dissimilar from what I experienced early on. So much so I remember sitting on the couch, literally I remember this day like it was yesterday, and I was looking at my wife and I said, this beginning feels a lot like what it felt like when I was in studios. The same conversations, the same energy, the same affirmations from people. I know how to do this. I just need a runway in order to be able to get there. And really trusting myself to know that, based off my past experiences and all the things that I kind of stuck my neck out in this weird kind of heretic way, I never fumbled the ball like in the end zone. Like I always made it work, unconventional as it may be. I always made it work. And I know I can do that in this time too, right? I just need a little bit of time to figure the thing out. So.
And so as far as like the teaching, did you always have a passion for education or did you fall into it? Okay. So that was kind of in you as well, the teaching aspect.
I mentioned my uncle, right? And just the profound impact that he had on so many people in our community, right? There's still times to this day. There was like a time in my life where I would run into people a couple times a month and they're like, your uncle changed my life.
Wow.
As a guy that was just providing creative opportunities for the community that he served, it just like was such a profound way of doing it. And now you start to think like arts are getting cut from the school and all these like, heartbreaking situations. But so I had always admired him and his ability to make impact on folks. The guy that founded my undergraduate and my graduate degrees, this guy named Joel Leach. And I remember one day just like staring at him and thinking of the totality of his life, probably tens of thousands of kids that had gone through the programs that he started and the impact that he made, just doing like that to their course of direction, and like how incredible what a privilege it is to be that person, And then I found out that he was like owned multiple businesses outside of the school, and he was like an expert witness in certain things. He wrote like an earthquake preparedness book that like helped him buy a freaking house right before the 94 earthquake. Like insane. I mean, apropos to you for where you are right now, right? you know, just like this crazy kind of hodgepodge of a human being. And I was like, well, if he can do it, like, what if I just take like 0.1% of the stuff that he's done and applied it to my life? So that was really my impetus to go back to school from a graduate perspective. Was I would love to be a part of that story. And I knew that I had kind of an aptitude of being in front of folks and talking about stuff. I always love like putting weird, complex concepts together and being like, no, it's just this simple. You know what I mean? So it kind of was just match of a personality. And I taught a very specific thing that happens in our industry. There's only like, you know, there's less than 1,000 people in the country that do what I did. And that was really cool. And that was kind of like the gateway into it. And then from there, the folks that I was working with, like my colleagues and the people that were program directors, they're like, but you're running these creative businesses too, right? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, well, do you want to talk about the entrepreneurship side of creativity? Do you want to talk about the marketing side and the distribution and the promotions, and all thing? I'm like, I would love to, you know? So it just kind of naturally fell into these other opportunities. You know, whether it was someone taking a sabbatical or they needed to start a new, you know, kind of part of their curriculum, whatever it was. I was just ambitious enough and dumb enough to say yes. And they took a risk on a dude that looks like this showing up with a skateboard under his arm, you know, screaming at a bunch of people for a couple hours every week, you know? So it's been a blast, man. It's been a blast.
Yeah. I think it's cool. Just to teach and to educate and to tell the story of where you've been and try to inspire like the next generation.
Yeah.
Dude, you know what would be cool? I think for the audience, could you talk a little bit about like what music licensing is, especially people that watch this that might want to be using music in their YouTube videos. And if you're, you know, just online music libraries versus like licensing like a song from like a bigger artist type, kind of what it is and how that works, just because it's kind of a fascinating world. And I think with like music on TikTok and Instagram and these libraries and kind of how all that works.
Yeah. So unbelievable question, and I'm like shifting the gears in my brain to like go into that mode.
Sure.
Right?
I think like, it's for educational purposes too, a little bit for myself as well, like how it works, and if I wanted to use a big artist song, obviously how that works.
Okay. So the nuts and bolts of what we're talking about where songs are concerned is there's two things from the song that we can protect, and it's the lyric and the melody. Right? So like the thing that you would whistle as you're going away, and then the actual words that are being sung. That's on this thing that we call the composition, or it's also known as the song, right? They say it's an underlying composition. Now, everything that you're hearing in the music business is someone going into a recording studio and making a recording, a sound recording, or they used to call it a master, of a composition. And if you think about it, it makes sense, because you can't walk into a booth and sing nothing. You need to sing a thing, right? And that's the underlying composition. The best way of kind of thinking about it is Frank Sinatra never wrote a song in his life, but he sang hundreds of recordings on Capitol Records. But a bunch of people wrote those songs that he sang. So that's kind of the distinction that we make, that Frank's a recording artist, and then a bunch of people wrote those songs that he did. So if you're, what people often find that they're getting in trouble with, or that they're concerned with online, is that they want to be able to use someone's underlying composition, and then what they don't think about is this master recording. These two things exist in tandem together. But the cool thing about here in the US and 126 other nations is that we've agreed that protecting people's expressions of those ideas has value. So a lot of people know about patents. We've seen the little registered R or the trademark against logos and those sorts of things. And we kind of understand that from like a regular perspective, like my phone that I'm holding up, it's like 100 or like 1,000 some odd patents that are involved in just this one particular screen, right? I think the joke was like, there's a Samsung screen and the Apple iPhone. That's a patent, you know? So we understand that side. But then the copyright of like protecting ideas is something that is a little less familiar, but it's really analogous, the same thing. And so when you create this thing, they call it fix your idea in a tangible medium of expression, immediately you get bestowed what's called the bundle of rights. And the bundle of rights are literally property rights. So like if you own a home, you own a car, you own those sorts of things, like you can do a bunch of stuff with those things. You can rent them, you can sell them, you can lease them, you can do a whole mess of stuff, right? You can do the same thing with your copyrights. They're property rights. They just originated from a thing that you thought of, right? So because we protect those rights and you have what's called this exclusive limited monopoly on how you can interact with them, the intent is that you're able to monetize this stuff. And if the market deems it popular or something that's valuable, you can make money off of it. And then they incentivize you to do it because you could potentially make money for generations to come, right? So an individual gets protected from the moment of origination for their life plus 70 years. Okay, cool. That's a whole bunch of like, we just set the table for the other question that you asked. So now because I have these bundle of rights and because I've fixed my idea in a tangible medium expression, I have these copyrights that I can do stuff with. Now the intent is for other people to use them in circumstances that I can benefit monetarily from, right? And so if that's the case, I want, in concept, I want as many opportunities for my song and potentially my master recording to be used as possible. So
through a license.
Yes. So the way that we do that, there's two things. Is now what you're talking about specifically is marrying music and motion picture at the same time. That's called synchronization. So we're literally taking the moving picture on one side and we're marrying it to sound in some way, shape, or form, whether that's Foley, sound design, or actual music itself, so that they move in synchronicity with one another. So we need two things in order for that to happen. We need permission to do so. That's the license. And we need to agree on a fee. Those are the two things that are necessary. And I need to do it for what we call both sides of the copyright. I need to do it for the underlying composition that I was talking about, and then that exact recording, which is that master recording, that is being sung, right? So I do that through a license. I do that through a license traditionally on the song side. That happens with the publisher. Traditionally on the master recording side, it happens with the record company. Those are the entities that tend to own those two sides of the copyright. And so that's what I need to do. Now, if I'm looking at a YouTube perspective, there's two variants that happen here. Either you're going through a music library, and I'm sure a bunch of people that are listening to this, you understand what Artlist is, Epidemic Sound.
Epidemic, yeah.
Right? Marmoset Music is another one. Killer Tracks is another one. I'm sure some of us have done some corporate videos where Shutterstock is a place that we go to. I know Pond5 has stuff, right? What's the other one that's popping into my head right now? It'll hit me again, right? But we've got dozens of them, right? Music Bed, all that stuff. What you're effectively doing is, in some way, shape, or form, let's say you do the subscription part of Epidemic Sound, okay? Now, a lot of us are familiar with, we're registering our accounts. We register our YouTube page, we register our Instagram page, we do those sorts of things. And if you get an enterprise account, you have the ability to assign licenses to the projects that you work on for clients. What you're doing, Epidemic Sound, actually, the people that create it are creating both the composition and the master at the same time. So one license, it's called a one-stop shop. One license covers both the master and the composition, and it's assignable to whatever client you want to. It's really good because it makes our life as video producers a lot easier because we don't have to go through and the client doesn't have to worry about it, right? A lot of times people get nervous. You put something up on YouTube, you get a copyright notice or a copyright strike. Really, one of two things is happening there. If you dispute it and your video producer gives you the license, which is very easy to do, you just Google it, or you can even look on Epidemic. They give you a very clear walkthrough. It's basically the link, you clear the thing, they see that the license is associated based off of the account that we pay for as video producers. Or, let's say you don't do that. Nowadays, it's super easy. All that's happening on YouTube is they're rerouting the money or the monetization that's being made off of that video from the video producer or the channel to the people that own the copyright.
Oh,
and that's
I didn't know that. Just on the back end, it just kind of happens.
That's it, right? Because there's really two different ways that music gets monetized on YouTube. One is called UGC, user-generated content. And that's the thing that I just talked about, right? So like if you or I, Eric, we do a cover of a song, right? We just sit we're acoustic and we do the thing and we tag it, Adele's, whatever the case might be. The title is going to trip this systems called content ID system to say, okay, this isn't Eric's song, obviously, but we're not going to take the video down because it's getting views and they're running ads against it. And now the publishing community is actually comfortable enough saying, hey, that's fine. Like, the intent of making a song is that as many exploitations of it as possible. So let's let the view count go. Let's let the ad money stack up. Eric doesn't get the money. Adele's publishing company does.
Dude,
so they're literally just, like on a railway where you're just switching the tracks.
Yeah.
That's all they're doing. They're just like moving the money from one place to the other.
How long have they not been pulling them down for? Like, that's fairly new?
It's been a lot. Like, I remember in the early days of what I was doing, I literally got brought on to Universal because they're like, we need to start licensing this brand new thing called YouTube. We don't know what to do with it. And I was like, oh, I'm on YouTube every day, So that's like where it started. So
they let the plays keep going up because of the advertising money. No way. Okay. For some reason I thought they pull it, but
so they did for a long time, right? If we all remember, kind of like, I think it would be something that's all nostalgic for us at this point, but like the upside down sad face of YouTube, where it's like the static on the background. That's what we remember. And I, some of my good friends from the early Universal days, like that's what their job was to hunt those things down, put in a claim, and have the song taken down.
So all the artists, the record labels, the publishers, so they've all agreed that this is a better route because the video can still get views and the right people can still get paid.
Exactly. So that's YouTube. On your smaller social platforms, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, those sorts of things, the publishing community and those platforms have agreed on what's called a blanket license. And a blanket is basically what you would think it is, right? And I talk about it this way. Like, if I want to go to sleep but I want to be warm, I'm not going to like put a hodgepodge of things on top of me to keep me warm. I'm going to pull a blanket over my entire body, right? And so that's what this licensing agreement is. It says, we're going to pay you a sum of money, a very large sum of money, and all of the content that we want to use on this platform is going to be cleared under that agreement.
Okay.
Right? That's not like a brand new novel concept. It's just being applied in this brand new novel way. Because if you think about radio, you think about TV, you think about like when you walk into Starbucks and music's playing, like that idea is basically the same thing as what they're doing on these social networks at this point.
Okay.
But it took them a while to figure out that that's like the thing that they wanted to do and what was okay, So same type of thing. It's like they kind of figure out who's getting the most plays. They distribute what that money against what those metrics are. But it's that blanket license that's happening on those platforms as of now. They had just started the conversation recently of renegotiating what those licensing deals are. Initially, it was supposed to be like, hey, can you just let us figure it? The platforms were saying, can you let us figure this out? Here's a bunch of money to go away and let us see how this platform matures. And so they're kind of starting to have these conversations again. So if you're watching this in the future, it may be different, but that's the YouTube is the rerouting of funds or the license that's applied from the music library that you subscribe to. And the online stuff, the smaller short form content is these blanket licenses that are put out. And it's evolved quite a bit. Like over the last couple of years, it used to be if you had a business account, you couldn't use popular music.
Right.
You had to license something and be able to provide what the library
the
music.
Creator accounts had more cool music to use.
Totally.
And the blanket of songs, like let's say, okay, TikTok, let's say the blanket, say there's like 1,000 artists with like 10,000 tracks available. Are those going to be different artists than what's part of like the Instagram blanket, the grouping of
probably not.
You think
probably not?
Okay.
It's usually kind of like there are definitely some exclusions, and that's based on contractual territories and certain types of approvals that are within that contract, right? So like this is not a one-to-one example, but like Prince really never wanted anyone to touch any of his music in terms of the cover, so he would make it as difficult as possible for people to use his music, right? So there are certain things like that, but by and large, like it's
like Ozzy's on TikTok. It's likely that his stuff's also available
for
on
sure,
Instagram, unless you said they did a specific agreement where I think the Beatles, I remember did something where
Yeah.
I think we're on, was it Spotify for a while or something? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's changed, but I remember Paul McCartney. They were like trying to work out something with him for the streaming platforms and stuff.
Totally. The way that those things tend to operate is that if you're negotiating in good faith on one platform, like the stuff tends to travel across those, you do the same type of deal from an Instagram to a TikTok to a Facebook to a Snapchat, those sorts of things. Small nuances, but similar idea, similar idea.
Yeah, I think that's important because, with so much content going out these days, vertical, long form, even podcast stuff.
Yeah.
I know Apple Podcasts has flagged some stuff in the past. I'm not sure how that goes now.
Yeah.
And let's say you're a bigger production, maybe corporate enterprise level, or just a big creator with a budget. Let's say you wanted to license like a song directly from an artist. Yeah. Like say you wanted to put an Ozzy Osbourne song in your video. Like,
yeah.
Obviously the costs associated with that are probably a ton more. And kind of how does that work?
Yeah. So it's not as dissimilar as you may think. First, R.I.P. Ozzy, and proud and honored to say that I was able to watch him a few different times in my lifetime. But great reference, and I'm appreciative that you said that.
Current effect, yeah.
But yeah, so that environment is not as crazy as people would think. But if we remember, we have to have those two sides licensed, right? That underlying composition and that master recording. And in most instances, what ends up happening in the process of being a songwriter or a recording artist is that you sign a publishing deal, and in that publishing deal, you grant the publishing company those bundle of rights that I was talking about earlier, right?
Right.
And then in the same context, when you do a recording agreement, right? You sign to a record label, they tend to own the master recording that they're paying for, right? That's kind of the arrangement that's at stake. So if I want to use an Ozzy track, I have to go to that respective publisher and that respective record company and say, hey, we want to use this track in our production. And then the publisher comes back, the record company comes back. They usually do this kind of in tandem with one another, like you're having these conversations at the same time. Mm-hmm. They come back and they go, great, like give us some more information about this.
Okay.
Like who's the director? What is the scene? How long do you want to use the song for? Is it something where you can see people performing the song, right? It's called a visual instrumental or a visual vocal. Or is it just going to be something that's playing in the background, right? Background instrumental, background vocal. Is it
a movie,
just a music section?
Commercial,
right?
Just a commercial.
Exactly.
Yeah.
For those that are wondering why I keep looking down, Eric's down here for me, and so like if I'm doing that sort of thing, that's I should have said that at the front of the recording, but
the cost associated with it's probably impossible to say. We're talking like tens of thousands of dollars.
It depends. It really depends. The interesting thing about this is that it's an agreement that's called willing buyer, willing seller.
Okay.
And what makes music so unbelievably unique is that we can point to a dozen different situations, Eric, in which the cost of music or the perceived cost of that music can change drastically.
Okay.
Even the same song across a multitude of instances. So where synchronization licensing is concerned, depending on where it's being used in the production, dictates what that cost would look like. But the artist can also say, the songwriter can also be like, hey, I just love this production. I want to be able to give this to them. If they own the rights, I just want to be able to give this to them in what's called a gratis license, right? Which is basically a free thing. So there's compensation or other ways of you being rewarded for your exploitation that aren't always monetary. We used to see stuff like, I remember like Fun, Foster the People, all the stuff they broke out on these instances of like, The Hills and like all those crazy shows in the mid-aughts or whatever. And a lot of that was either drastically reduced fees, like $5,000 a side or something crazy like that. Or it was, hey, this episode featured music from Foster the People and like a link to the website and your ability to go and check it out, because the exposure was something that would help that band more than the $2,500, $15, whatever it was that they got for that placement.
So they used it as like a marketing opportunity in those instances to be kind of, it was kind of slick actually. It's not, that's, if
it makes sense, it makes sense.
Just breaking out and to get that extra exposure.
Right.
Yeah.
Now those types of deals aren't as proliferant as they used to be, because obviously the Late Show just got canceled because not that many people are watching it. Same type of things happening on cable TV as well, right? Most people's eyes are turned to streaming and some sort of thing like that. So it's not as prominent as it used to be, but those are options. And the reason that I gave that is because it can be a free exploitation, or there's 9-figure deals that happen. It's insane. For like, I tell a story about a Cadillac commercial for the original CTV and CTS, where the Doors were supposed to be the actual track that was licensed. They backed out of it for fear of selling out to their audience, which I'm like, yo, they're already cashing in their 401ks, man. Like they've already sold out. And so Zeppelin stepped in and did, it's been a long time since I first got down. And the deal that was on the table was an 8-figure deal for that one commercial for 1 year.
Wow. Yeah.
So it can be unbelievably lucrative, but it all depends on leverage,
right?
How popular the song is and the circumstances in which the song is being used for, right? So that's why when I said we need permission, number one, we need that license. And the second aspect that it's always negotiated is how much is this going to cost? What's the fee? And it's totally circumstantial. But if you think of like exploitations of music on the radio, that's perceivably free for us, right? An ad-supported streaming subscription where you're like on web doing it Spotify, for the user, perceivably free. But if I go and download the track, now that song's $1. But if I use it as the opening title sequence of the newest Marvel movie, that's probably a couple $1 million of a placement, if not tens of millions. So the same song, different contexts, has completely different values. And so what we talk about is the elasticity of the value of music, which is what makes it such a unique industry. Like the real estate business, like the house is what it costs, right? Like the iPhone is what it costs. The camera is what it costs. Music can stretch depending on the circumstances and who's asking for it and who's the person that's giving those rights away. It's super interesting.
Yeah, no, that is really interesting. I didn't think of it too as like, the different usage, whether it's for a YouTube video, a trailer for a movie, whether you're just listening to it on Spotify for free or whatever, or for the rate for the subscription. But I think that's helpful for people because, music is a big part of all the digital content online, and you want to make sure that you are going through the proper channels to use the music. But
I always say before you do, there's one thing I say all the time. And music has been my unfair advantage in film consistently, like since I started and even today. And I use this saying, 70% of what you see is sound. And it is to me, it's the most impactful like tool as video producers, especially editors, that we can use, because like it is such an unfair advantage from an emotional storytelling standpoint. Of like if I'm putting the right music with the right pacing and the right cadence, and it's got the perfect chord progression and this minor set, like I'm hitting all of the emotional buttons that I need to do. And we could just put on, we've seen this all the time. There's like, I didn't know I was pregnant, or whatever those crazy shows are, but they put the right production elements in place, and you're like, well, I kind of feel for Kylie. Like she's got this thing. It's like, this is an insane concept, dude. Like you're just being manipulated by what's being on the screen, So 70% is what you see as sound. It's a crazy world.
Let's talk a little bit about that unfair advantage, and then I want to talk about like your YouTube channel and continuing to teach and doing your video production company. Dude, like, so for creators, let's say like, there's somebody out there, a new creator, or they have some skills. They don't quite know what to create or on what medium to create it. Like, explain what the unfair advantage is to people. And it's kind of like, the way I see it is like, let's say you want to create a YouTube channel about baseball, and you are like, on the side, you've been following baseball your whole life. You know all these stats about all these people. You're passionate. You grew up going to Dodger Stadium. That, I guess, and this might not be the best example, but that's kind of your unfair advantage, because you already kind of have all this knowledge and these like internal assets that you can then use to create content. And that's probably not the best example, but
it's actually an excellent example.
Is it? Okay.
No, I think it's an excellent example. So it's funny you say this. I had this conversation with a younger family friend this week. I just ran into her in a buddy's studio.
because I think that's people creating content need to like leverage that and like double down on that.
So this is the thing that is, especially in I'm so privileged to be in front of younger, seasoned creatives often. Now, age has no bearing on this. It's really just like experience in terms of how they're looking at their creative career. And oftentimes the conversation ends up going back to this particular point, which is like, who am I to even try this in any way, shape, or form? Right. And like, how do I get started? Like, what do I shoot? What do I say? How do I say, like, any of those sorts of things?
Right.
And I think this is a huge missed opportunity for creatives, because we are living from a historical standpoint, we are living in the most powerful time for creatives that has ever existed. We have to remember that, like, if you were somebody that had a creative capacity and you were living in medieval times, you were like the court jester with, the old Stussy logo with like the jester. Like, you were effectively a clown, and you literally got paid by the royalty, the duchess, the duke, whatever that is, just to entertain them at different parties and events and whatever the case is, by telling jokes and doing tricks and singing songs and doing those sorts of things. And that was it. Like, that's the only outlet that you could possibly have. And today, my boys, you mentioned baseball. I think it's a perfect analogy. There are baseball's obviously, it's America's pastime, right? So there's all this different stuff, as I'm wearing my OG Kings hat here, as a diehard hockey player and fan. But this guy that I'm thinking about in particular does these 30-minute video essays on the most like, this one base stealing technique changed the way that MLB wrote the rules forever. It's a 30-minute video essay on this stuff. And because we're living in the era of the meritocracy of the internet, meaning the people get to decide what is good and what is valuable, not gatekeepers, not people that are A&R executives, not video producers, not studios, the people get to decide. This is interesting. This has value. This is entertaining me. I'm going to give my attention to this particular outlet. We have all of the power. And so you, as the person with your lived experience, with the fact that you've gone through life and you've had all these different things that have happened to you, with the way that you view the world, the technology that you're capable of using, the way that you want to tell those stories, that is, from a business standpoint, we call that's the unique selling proposition, right? That is your competitive advantage. Mine happened to be, I've had a pretty crazy life experience. By the time I was 25 years old, I had buried more people than I could count. I literally bought a suit that I could go to weddings and funerals in, because I had lost so many people in my life. And so that shapes the way you view the world, right? I have an interesting way of connecting to emotional storytelling that a lot of other people don't necessarily have. But I'm not a great visual effects artist. I kind of know half of being smart's knowing what you're dumb at. Like, I stay in my lanes. So from this younger, family friend that I was talking to, she's like, I don't even know what to shoot. I'm like, who cares? Pick up a camera, start getting just start copying people.
Yeah.
Your unique life position is going to just smother the fact that you're trying to do something that someone else is doing, because you're going to see it in this way. And this young person, like, I know her story, right? So or enough of it that I can be like, you have depth as a human being that you can pour into your art. And yes, are the first however many reps, I mean, you mentioned this earlier, Eric, like, the first however many reps, are they going to suck? Probably.
Yeah.
Are you going to have to take a bunch of shitty gigs to get to a good one? Yes.
Yeah.
But that's the differentiator between a successful creative and one that says, I used to do this and then I had to get a real job. It's that persistence that we have. And I say this from a musical standpoint, from a filmmaking standpoint, all the time. The reason that Lady Gaga is way more known as a musician, is more successful than I am, is that she had the grit to sleep on way more couches than I did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talent's not the line of success. Like, that's the barometer that you have to step, the threshold you step over to play the game. Can you stay in that game long enough?
Yeah.
And take enough punches to still sit on the other side of it and be like, this is what I do. This is my voice in this thing. And so I firmly believe, as a creative, I get paid and I get to support my family literally through the way that I see the world. That's what people are paying me to do, is to take their vision, their message, their idea, and to shoot it through my eyeballs and to give them something back that's meaningful to them, that moves the needle on their side as well, right? Whether it's from a marketing standpoint, product standpoint, whatever it is. And the more I believe that, and the more I set my life up to be able to kind of double down into that thing, the more success I've had, is just owning that this is my unique position, and the way that I do my work. And the greatest thing is that, like you said, there's content going up literally hundreds of thousands of minutes every second. It's insane. And so there's a lot of work to go around. I don't have to be competitive or arms out with any of those sorts of things. And so that's like part of why my YouTube channel is what it is. Like, I just, dude, take all the information that you can.
Yeah.
Because your ability to look at that and then put it through your own machine and regurgitate all that stuff out, like, it's only going to make me stronger in the end. You know? So it's like, I know we do similar stuff. I do a lot of podcast production too. I do a lot of audio, like, cool. Like, I can't wait to talk about all that stuff with you, because we get to this place where it's like, dude, iron sharpens iron. Like, let's be each other's swords that are going out there and be like, hey, so what do you do in this situation? Like, how have you solved these problems? And then we get to kind of make a better solution for clients, so that we as creatives gain a lot more respect and being looked at not just as like, I have a camera and I hit record and like it works. It's 4K too. No, dude, like, we have to solve problems.
Yeah.
So I want to solve problems more effectively for clients so that I can solve bigger, better problems for them, so that I can be a bigger, better creative. You know what I mean?
Yeah, damn, that was hype. He hyped me out. It was like a locker room speech right there.
That's it. Let's go.
No, I love that.
Let's go.
We'll get you out of here, but before we leave, tell me a little bit about your YouTube channel. I love all the Premiere tutorials. I think that stuff's super important. That stuff, man, I can't tell you how much I've learned about any subject just by watching it on YouTube. So tell me a little bit about that, and then what you've got going on right now for projects and what you're excited to be working on.
Absolutely. So first of all, thank you for that. YouTube, like I mentioned, like, that was where it all kind of started for me from a video production standpoint. And so it's kind of this interesting thing where, like, I have this weird superstition where if I stop putting energy into YouTube, like, my world kind of dries up from a video production standpoint, right? It's like disrespecting the thing that got you there, so to speak. So that's kind of like the underlying thing. And then I just really love it. Like, on any given night, I get to speak to, 40 to 50 students in a room at one particular time. And I'm privileged enough to have a bunch of videos that have crossed the 5-figure mark, some that are in the 6-figure mark. Like, that's a lot of students in the room at one time. You know?
Yeah.
And so really, the online world to me is a way of disseminating my viewpoint to a much wider audience. And that's really how I look at it,
It's
and
the
then,
education piece. Again, more of that. Yeah.
Totally. And, just spending time in front of the camera, it, like, just enhances my ability to direct more, because I understand what that stuff looks and feels like. And it's just a constant drip in the editing machine of, like, working through, like, Premiere tutorials can be pretty drab and boring, you know what I mean? But, like, how do I put my fun, interesting spin on it? Like, can I make it engaging? Can I make it funny for you? Can I hold your attention by the way that I'm editing and the different things that I'm popping up on the screen? All of that stuff pours into my professional work, and how I can hold attention, for the viewer as long as possible, and the different tools that we can use in order to do that. And then I like detail to a certain degree. And Premiere, I'm like in the weeds on so many different things where it's like I use a bunch of tools that nobody even has a clue exist, So it's this interesting balance. Like, the Premiere Pro tutorial stuff is really what's been working for me recently. But I love talking about, like, the broader ideas of creativity. I do a ton of different stuff, and like, from a episodic standpoint of, like, what is the business of being a creative? Like,
it's important.
I was just talking about adding value, right?
Yeah.
Like, what are the different ways as a video professional that you can seem more expensive than you may actually be? Like, this is a thing back to Josh. Like, Josh's proposals are exquisite.
Are they?
They're exquisite, dude. And so, like, I remember looking at them and be like, like, this is, I'm stealing all of this, man. I'm taking it and making my own version of it, right? But, like, I'm stealing this whole thing. And so a lot of it becomes there. Like, you want to level up your game as what your perceived value is to outside clientele. Like, it's not just what camera you have, what lens you have, what lighting technique you can use. It's how do you communicate with clients from discovery and awareness all the way through to delivery and notes. And can that be an elevated process throughout the entire time? I mean, the answer is yes. And it doesn't have to be a honey book. It doesn't have to be any of those sorts of things. It can be your own way of, putting together those sorts of things. So it's like equal parts that.
That's good.
And again, like,
people need
yeah,
that.
totally. And to summarize it, like, it's just my ability of having my own little ecosystem of just pouring my passion for education and my passion of being a creative entrepreneur or business owner, whatever term we want to use, and just giving people the opportunity to like find it. And I remember even just being kind of wrapping it full circle. Like, I made some weird avant-garde music, and like, although I had all my monikers of success and checked all the boxes that I wanted to, I knew it wasn't something that was going to be like ultra popular, like Billboard 200 type of stuff. And so my whole motivation for this was like, if I can inspire a kid in the middle of Peoria, Iowa, to be like, to have their Dirk Lance moment and be like, I didn't even know that you can make music like this, then I did my job. And now that same idea, as a guy that's in his mid 40s, that's really like what I get up every morning and get fired the fuck up to do, is like, I like to be able to kind of move through life in my own way. And if I can inspire people to take a chance and risk a lot of comfort and structure and all these different things in order to live a life that they're excited about and that they're passionate about, and that they get to do the thing that they love every day, I'm all for that, man. Yeah. I can't think of a better way to spend my time, Yeah. I was grateful enough to have people do that for me. And I think that the way that you continue to reap those types of benefits and stay in that pocket as long as you can is like, you got to give back, right? Like, that reciprocity is huge. And I'm grateful for the time that we live in, that the internet allows us to connect to people like that we get to connect like this. Yeah. Because it's really meaningful and important stuff to me, I think that's the way that this thing gets better across time, is like a collective goodness.
I love that, man. Your passion for educating and helping people definitely comes across in your work. Thanks, and in this conversation. So I appreciate that.
Thanks, man.
That don't always get that from people. So that's exciting. And man, you probably, working with college kids, they're probably just whizzes at like the social media stuff and like creating like the TikToks and all that. They're so good at all that stuff. It's crazy
and fast now too. I used to be like, dude, I'm so fast, and I see some of these kids and how fast they're cranking stuff out. I'm like, man, make me feel like a dinosaur. But
it's cool to see that, because they learn from you, and you probably learn from them in that regard. So
every class I open up, Eric, is like, you guys think that I'm here to talk to you? Like, there's so much mutual reciprocity that's going to happen. It's going to be crazy, Yeah. So it's interesting.
We'll get you out of here. Tell me what you're excited to be working on now. Where can people find you? All that good stuff.
Yeah, dude. Right now I'm working on a ton of crazy lead magnet stuff for my business. I'm trying to normalize the peaks and valleys a little bit. And so I'm putting out a ton of content in terms of like, I'm working on a Build It in Public series for what I'm doing, right? Okay. So like, how do I get an email list started? How do we get those sorts of things? And then I've kind of shifted a little bit more into, my dad was a subcontractor and I grew up in the trades. I'm like constantly working. I'm literally remodeling my kitchen right now as we speak.
Yourself or with?
Yeah, dude. It's really crazy. Yeah. And surprisingly, it's coming out really great too. I'm like really stoked on this.
Wow.
But I'm working a lot more in the construction space.
Okay.
They got a crazy amount of budgets now, and like the way that, especially in LA, in terms of like normal stuff, the macro environment, like we did a lot of business with China last year that's just non-existent this year. So
there's probably opportunities to film some stuff too, like some
pretty cool
behind the scenes, and like that's cool.
Yeah, it's rad. So doing a lot of that stuff. So the Build It in Public is something I'm really excited about, and sharing what that process is. And just keep kind of expanding and being able to shoot from different techniques and, all the different editing that's involved in that stuff too. So tune in. YouTube is just my name. My Instagram is RMT Shoots. And I think I'm there on whatever the Twitter thing and all that sort of stuff is too. But that's where I hang out mostly online, is those two places. And then, I'm stoked I get to keep teaching and doing those sorts of things. And it's a lot of fun. So I loved it. This was awesome, man. I really loved this.
It did. It was awesome. We'll link to all that stuff. And yeah, man, good talking.
Yeah, right back at you, man. This is a joy. I appreciate you.